Welcome back to the channel. Today there's focus on the Airbus A321XLR, which, if you like this aircraft, in for a pretty busy couple of days here on the channel discussing this upcoming type. Then we move over to Aer Lingus, and lastly I'll conclude with a Canadian company that is hoping to turn around its fortunes. But let's begin with the upcoming Airbus single aisle, with Japan Airlines recently really emphasizing the growth and renewal efforts of its fleet, which has been highlighted this year alone through several new aircraft purchases. The latest commitment for narrow and wide-body jets will vary in their overall purpose, from international flying to serving more regional domestic markets, and Aviation Week reports internally that they're reviewing the A321XLR. A change of heart from initial comments that saw the company very much reserved on just purchasing the base model and not necessarily looking at anything flashy. The airline's SVP stated that while no decision has been made, the XLR remains a fascinating proposition that absolutely has to be evaluated internally. Much of this evaluation that I speak of will first rest on the aircraft formally entering service with airlines like that of Iberia to understand how the jet actually operates to markets in an efficient manner. After Japan Airlines gauges how this performs, it can evaluate how the type would work when flying to and from Japan on its network. The recently certified A321XLR is expected to enter service shortly and will play a pivotal role in redefining what it means to operate single-aisle jets. The type has an enhanced range of 4,700 nautical miles and is pitched directly to airlines that want to improve their medium to long-haul flying. This type of flying can be achieved without now needing a wide-body plane, which opens up either new route opportunities into markets that, say, don't require such a high-capacity aircraft, or is actually going to ease pressures on those wide bodies that I speak of, with cheaper flying and greater competitiveness across several locations. When Japan Airlines, you may recall, ordered the A321neo earlier this year, they stated that the plane would be deployed across their domestic network and complement the A350s, which do a similar job, that being the Dash 900s that are currently operational. However, interestingly, Japan Airlines finds itself in a bit of a very similar spot to other companies around the world. It's struggled to really source a true middle-of-the-market airliner that is fit to replace an aircraft like that of the 767, arguably not aided by Boeing not moving forward with their own true NMA. Such significant discussion on the fleet renewal efforts, which has really occupied headlines for this company across this year, comes as they really do attempt to overhaul several aspects of their business to make sure they're not only profitable for the future, but that they can adequately streamline. The A321XLR being considered, I'd argue, is at the very least a testament to this single-aisle jet, which is readying to enter into service. It truly does have those game-changing capabilities that many airlines are flocking to, and it's turning heads for sure. Over to Aer Lingus, and well, they're going to be reducing flights from Dublin to the popular London Heathrow during this upcoming winter schedule. The reduction will result in 2 fewer flights per day from the Irish company, with them citing aspects such as declining passenger demand and airport restrictions as why they're moving in this direction. And while I do speak a lot on the reductions that will occur in the winter period, this is expected to continue into the northern summer schedule of 2025 as Aer Lingus sees drops in demand. Now, obviously, they will be flying more times a day to London Heathrow in the summer than the winter, but when comparing it year over year, we will still see a very similar reduction level. The changes were confirmed by the International Airlines Group, or more commonly referred to as IAG, which we know Aer Lingus calls home. The Irish flag carrier is reportedly conducting a what you'd call capacity review to really determine the best manner to use the assets it does have available to ensure that its business remains profitable for the long term. A great deal of the capacity review actually relates to the ongoing passenger cap that we're witnessing at its home of Dublin Airport, which has forced adjustments to be made regarding aircraft utilisation. And when you consider that they're preparing to add the A321XLR to their fleet in the future, which we know will play a very important role, it really needs to consider how it'll deploy its existing planes, and that includes planes such as the A330, this being your high-capacity wide-body. And on top of that, Aer Lingus faces some pretty hefty competition competition from companies such as JetBlue and more that have all looked to grow in that transatlantic space over time. All these adjustments, though, that I speak of are important, and just Aer Lingus doing their due diligence to really ensure that performance can remain at a competitive level and doesn't see them slip into negative space, say, for the long term. Moving across the Atlantic and over to Canada with that of Flair Airlines, and since they've entered this industry, they've faced quite a fair bit of adversity, with many always questioning their long-term vision, and also you'd probably extend that towards viability. Thus far, the airline has seen debts mount to quite considerable levels, frustrations regarding a profitable and competitive route network, and concerns with some of their backers in its 777 partners. However, Flair Airlines believes it has the team required to move forward in a positive manner, focusing on raising funds that would benefit the company. As part of the mission to raise funds, the ambition would be to ease the overall burden across the airline, following taxes, among many other complexities. While Flair Airlines doesn't believe it needs funds immediately, what I find very fascinating is the amount quoted that would be considered ideal, and that is $100 million. Despite the airline's executives being very clear that this doesn't necessarily need to come in, so it's not a matter of urgency, they believe the funding would be an amount that would allow them to stabilize and give greater comfort in this ongoing restructuring process that Flair Airlines finds themselves entangled in. All these efforts to stabilise follow a turbulent start to its operational life, which saw 777 partners aim to deploy 737 MAX jets to the company to aid what can only be described as a rapid growth plan. Now, 777 partners is in court for accusations surrounding fraud, a key cornerstone of the demise of technically a partner in Bonza, located here in Australia. The pair previously worked together to lend capacity during peak periods. Costs are mounting for Flair, and concerns are raised also about back taxes that are owed to the Canadian government. You also have to remember the legal ramifications of aircraft that were seized in a manner that Flair believes to be unlawful. Their operations really just haven't been stable, and there's a great concern that they'll struggle to stay afloat unless things don't change. Remember also, before this entire debacle, Flair had been long rumoured to be negotiating a merger with Lynx Air, a consolidation in the Canadian aviation industry. However, this deal wouldn't eventuate, and Lynx Air has now ceased operations, leaving Flair on its own. But it's an unforgiving market. They do still see a little bit of potential. With lots of axing across the Canadian market in the last 12 months, it's left Flair almost on its own, and it believes that it could potentially leverage this to really forge out a market of its own, but it will face competition from not just far greater but more established companies such as Air Canada, WestJet, and more alike, which have all pushed to take on more capacity following the demise of several Canadian companies. Flair does need to stabilise, and if seeking additional funding to do this is the direction it needs to head, it'll have to head that way, but will that truly be enough? Time will only tell. Thanks for watching today's recap. Take care, be safe, and I'll see you same place, same time tomorrow.